Today is the 9th day of March 2026. I do not say this because I imagine you do not know what day it is. I say it because I want there to be no doubt about the significance of this moment. Years from now, we will look back on this day as a turning point in the journey of our nation's transformation. Today, I have signed into law the National Infrastructure Fund. For too long, Kenya has been a nation of great ambition without the financial resources to match it. We have known that what we must build, including roads, railways, ports, power, housing, and irrigation, yet too often, the means to achieve them remained beyond our reach. But Kenya has never been a nation defined by limitation. The generations before us fought for independence, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Because of them, we live under one of the most progressive, democratic, and open societies in the world. Our Constitution guarantees healthcare, housing, food, water, education, and social security as fundamental rights, but rights written on paper must be delivered in reality. That conviction gave rise to the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, the belief that our nationhood remains incomplete so long as millions are excluded from economic opportunity. When we asked our local banks, when we had a crisis of fuel in Kenya, we didn't have oil products in Kenya because we had serious shortages. And we asked banks to step in so that we can create a G2G framework. Some banks were shy, understandably so, but some stepped up. Today, I am very proud of the contribution of Kenya Commercial Bank. In fact, they endured a lot of ridicule. They were told that they were so much in bed with government, they would suffer many consequences. But look at what has happened. The share of KCB at the Nairobi Securities Exchange has moved from, what was it in 17, 18, 20, what? 15 shillings in 2023. Today is close to 80. That is what happens when you work with government in a structured manner. And friends, we are not mad and we are not fools. We know what we are doing. And we want to do it with you. We want to work with you. I am very happy that many of our banks now believe in what we are doing, and many of them are stepping forward. I want to encourage you that we will be prudent, we will be responsible, we will be transparent as well. And we want to have a candid conversation with our financial institutions because we must together be prudent in the management of the resources of our nation. We don't have a nation that belongs to the private sector, neither do we have one that belongs to the public sector. We are one, and therefore, we will work together. I must confess that I struggle to understand the argument that using infrastructure assets to finance additional infrastructure somehow amounts to selling the family silver. I don't understand how that logic is. On the contrary, it is the responsible stewardship of national assets for national development. Many of you will also be aware that Parliament recently enacted the Government-Owned Enterprises Act. This legislation provides modern legal framework for commercializing government enterprises and ensuring that they operate according to the highest standard of corporate governance. This is what our friends from the banks were telling us. I want to assure you that the National Infrastructure Fund and all the other government-owned enterprises, we have made a decision that these assets will be, these parastatals and government agencies will be run on the same principles as the private sector, if not higher. That is our commitment. We have made the decision that these commercially viable agencies and enterprises will not be run by people with political connection. They will not be run by politicians who have not succeeded in their quest. They will not be run by people who have not been subjected to competitive recruitment. This is how we are going to change how Kenya delivers on the most critical and priority programs. We must build the future rather than wait for that future. The National Infrastructure Fund gives us the opportunity to build the future rather than wait for it. He has said another fundamental statement, because I was listening very carefully. He said, for a very long time, we have been exporting our jobs FOB and importing inflation CFI. Did you listen? So it is time to change that. And this is the opportunity, working together, for us to change that. And I will, with a lot of pride, work with you on your theme of Africa we build. We will be there. Because we want, this is our continent we must build. At a very personal level, I have been building. Yes. From right here in State House, this structure you see here, I built it. And you can see there is construction going on. And it's not just going on in State House. It is going on in markets. It's going on in hostels. It is going on in housing projects. It's going on in the roads. It's going on everywhere. We are building Kenya, and we will work with you to build Africa. Because that is what it is. That is how we are going to transform our nations. Kenya Pipeline Company IPO has generated 106 billion shillings that will be used to capitalize the National Infrastructure Fund. Our goal is to leverage this capital at least 12 times, mobilizing up to 1.2 trillion shillings for infrastructure investment. Over time, this model will enable Kenya to mobilize close to 5 trillion shillings in infrastructure investments over the next decade. And that is why all of us are talking about over the next generation. Previously, this asset would have provided the National Treasury with a dividend of about 5 billion shillings annually. That's exactly what John Mbadi was saying. This asset of Kenya Pipeline, we would be receiving a dividend of 5 billion shillings every year. But look at what it is going to do. The maximization of this mature asset is going to do maybe 20, 30 times what the 5 billion shillings would do for us every year. And that is the genius in rearranging and reorganizing our resources in a manner that it works best and we maximize their output and benefit and create much more impact than it currently is creating. Through the National Infrastructure Fund, that value of $5 billion will now be multiplied many times over, delivering infrastructure that will benefit all the people of Kenya. Parastatals and government agencies will be run on the same principles as the private sector, if not higher. That is our commitment. We have made the decision that these commercially viable agencies and enterprises will not be run by people with political connection. They will not be run by politicians who have not succeeded in their quest. They will not be run by people who have not been subjected to competitive recruitment. This is how we are going to change how Kenya delivers on the most critical and priority programs. This legislation provides a modern, as I said, framework for us to work with the private sector. Institutions such as the Kenya Airports Authority, Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways, KETRACO, the Geothermal Development Company, the National Cereals and Produce Board, will now operate under this framework, among others. Over time, these entities will access capital markets, and the proceeds will allow us to build even more infrastructure for the future. The law establishing the National Infrastructure Fund also provides strong governance safeguards. It establishes a governing council responsible for strategic oversight, strengthens the professionalism and independence of the fund's board, and ensures parliamentary oversight in its investment policy to guarantee transparency, accountability, and the prudent stewardship of public resources. The annual growth of 700 billion shillings, equivalent to roughly $5.3 billion, exceeds the World Bank's estimate of our total annual infrastructure financing requirement. The National Infrastructure Fund provides a mechanism to channel these long-term savings directly into infrastructure investments. Mobilizing domestic capital will help us solve three major challenges that arise when development depends excessively on foreign financing. The first challenge it will help us solve is the mismatch of investment horizon. Infrastructure projects are long-term assets. Whether you talk about highways, toll roads, energy, and rail, these are long-term infrastructure. They are viable. They are commercially viable, but their gestation period is longer. Look at what we did with the SGR. We took facilities of 15 years and 20 years. That is why it almost crushed us. Now we have an opportunity to, under the National Infrastructure Fund, to crowd in resources with a long-term view and make those infrastructure projects work for the people investing and for the nation, and make them commercially viable. Let me emphasize that the National Infrastructure Fund is not an experiment. It is a model that has been adopted successfully around the world. Examples include the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund, established in 2011, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund in 2014, India's National Investment and Infrastructure Fund in 2015, the Canada Infrastructure Bank in 2017, the United Kingdom's National Wealth Fund, and the South Africa's Infrastructure Fund. We have drawn lessons from all these experiences I remember we sat down here with many of the people who have developed these funds. IFC was on the table with us. I have had conversations with my good friend Tadesse on this. And Tadesse, 2.5 years ago, encouraged me, Mr. President, think about owning your own horse. And the horse he was talking about is the National Infrastructure Fund. Thank you very much, Tadesse, for your insights. I also wish to thank the people of Kenya and Parliament for their support in passing the National Infrastructure Bill. Through public participation, thousands of Kenyans contributed ideas that helped strengthen the governance and transparency provisions contained in the final act. In approving this legislation, Parliament has once again demonstrated foresight, responsibility, and a shared commitment to strengthen the long-term foundation of our country's growth and prosperity. Let me single out the Leader of Majority and the Chair and Committee of Parliament on Finance. Please, if they can rise up so that we can applaud them. Tuwapigie makofi jameni. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. When I finally write my book, you will have a special chapter. Because what we are doing today is very, very consequential to the development of our great nation. I want to thank our development finance partners, including the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation represented here today, who have supported us in designing this framework. The statute we have signed today specifically allows the National Infrastructure Fund to leverage the technical expertise of development finance institutions, of which Kenya is a member. The National Infrastructure Fund will help us, number one, prioritize what is important to us. Number one. Number two, structure our priorities and make them or package them into investable instruments. That capacity, as was said by our banks here, the banks will come in, our DFIs will come in, so that together we can build the capacity to be able to structure what is priority for Kenya into investable instruments. And number three, we will be the first in. We have the resources to either de-risk or to participate in making sure that other investors see us in the equation rather than us encouraging them to be in the equation. Indeed, I must acknowledge that without the responsiveness of our regional and global partners, including the Trade and Development Bank, Afri-Exim Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, the Africa Development Bank, the World Bank, Kenya would have faced far greater difficulty navigating the global financial turbulence of the last 2 years of my administration. And these good people have been friends to us. We've had very difficult conversations sometimes, but we have been candid and we've been open in our conversations. The National Infrastructure Fund is a commitment we made to the Kenyan people in our manifesto. Today, we fulfill that promise. But why did we propose the National Infrastructure Fund in the first place? Because of the scale of the challenge before us, there is need for a new approach. Multilateral development institutions estimate that Africa faces an infrastructure financing gap of up to $80 billion every year. That is the continent requires about between 130 and 170 billion dollars for infrastructure development every year. Kenya and our infrastructure needs reflects that very reality. Every meeting, in every part of Kenya, the conversation is about this road and the other road. Electricity connection to this village and to that town. Connectivity in different parts of the country. And access to agricultural infrastructure for food security. Every meeting in every part of Kenya speaks to those issues. The potential for domestic capital is immense. You just heard the numbers. We have 2.81 trillion of Kenyan money that is available from our pensions and our other collectives. This is money, patient money, that can be used for our national development. Pension money is for pensioners, but pensioners have children. We've been told here by my good friend, the CEO of Africa Finance Corporation. We must use pensions to create jobs for the children of those whose pensions we are managing. That's what he told us. You know, that money must work for the pensioners. It must work for their children. And we now have the structure. We now have the plan to make sure that we channel those resources in the right direction. Make sure that it earns a returns for the pensioners, but also supports our national development. Last year alone, Kenyan pension funds assets grew by 700 billion shillings, representing a 25% increase, bringing total pension assets to 2.81 trillion. In 2023, as Kili said, it was 1.6 trillion. Look at the growth. It's growing by 700 billion every year. It will not be possible for you to invest that money in treasury bills or treasury bonds. We have to look for new asset classes for us. And I want to ask the people in that space to begin to think about new asset classes and to eliminate restrictions that are put on pension money to invest in other asset classes that gives a return, but also helps grow the nation and grow the economy. The World Bank has estimated that our country requires approximately $4 billion each year to meet its infrastructure needs. A decade ago, Africa, Kenya included, believed it had found a once-in-a-generation opportunity to accelerate infrastructure development. Global interest rates were historically low following the global financial crisis. The China's Belt and Road Initiative opened new sources of infrastructure financing. But we did not fully anticipate the risks of relying so heavily on sovereign debt. And certainly, none of us could have foreseen the shocks that would soon follow: the COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic and financial turbulence that came in its wake. It was against this backdrop that my team and I began to ask ourselves a necessary question before the last election. We spent a lot of time a year before the last election, and we asked ourselves, how would Kenya continue investing in the infrastructure required for our development, while at the same time stabilizing our economy, responding to all the other challenges that come with it, and navigating the aftershocks of pandemics. We knew that a period of fiscal discipline would be unavoidable, but we also knew that halting development was not an option. I remember this very clearly when I sat with David Ndii, who I'm sure is in our midst here, and Hassan, who is here, discussing how we are going to do things differently. That was 1 year before the last election. And we sat under a tree and we were discussing. They are much more knowledgeable than me in those matters. They schooled me in some of the items. But as Mpende said, I am also a fast learner. That is where the idea of the National Infrastructure Fund was born. We must build the future rather than wait for that future. The National Infrastructure Fund gives us the opportunity to build the future rather than wait for it. He has said another fundamental statement, because I was listening very carefully. He said, for a very long time, we have been exporting our jobs FOB and importing inflation CFI. Did you listen? So it is time to change that. And this is the opportunity, working together, for us to change that. And I will, with a lot of pride, work with you on your theme of Africa we build. We will be there. Because we want, this is our continent we must build. At a very personal level, I have been building. Yes. From right here in State House, this structure you see here, I built it. And you can see there is construction going on. And it's not just going on in State House. It is going on in markets. It's going on in hostels. It is going on in housing projects. It's going on in the roads. It's going on everywhere. We are building Kenya, and we will work with you to build Africa. Because that is what it is. That is how we are going to transform our nations. Today's moment, therefore, represents more than a creation of a fund. It represents a new chapter in how Kenya finances its future. A chapter where we invest at scale in the foundation of a first-world economy, transforming agriculture through extensive irrigation and water infrastructure, expanding modern infrastructure, including roads, rail, ports, airports, and logistic corridors that connect our farms, factories, and markets, and scaling up reliable energy to power industry, innovation, and value-added production across our economy. A chapter where our ambition is matched by our capacity. A chapter where the savings of Kenyans today build the infrastructure of Kenya's tomorrow. And a chapter where development is not postponed for tomorrow, but financed confidently today. Lindsay Capital worked with us in raising resources for the building of Talanta, one of our very big stadia that will host AFCON next year. I saw a gentleman say that, William Ruto and the government, they have already pledged for 15 years money from our resources to build Talanta. Yes, we have. That's correct. That's what we have done. But I want to ask the question. The last 15 years, what has that fund done? Do you have anything that you can see that that fund has done for the last 15 years? Nothing. Cabro here, a gate there, some other money stolen at the corner, others appropriated at another place. We are better off pledging 15 years when we can see a facility like Talanta Center standing, because then there will be no money to be stolen and there will be no money to be appropriated or to be misappropriated, because the money will be locked up in an asset that we can see. That's the whole difference. So if you are complaining that we have pledged money for 15 years to build Talanta, before you make that statement, tell us what that money has done the last 15 years. At least we can show that we have an asset that we can begin to use today. And we can monetize it today. That's how we are going to be innovative. That's how we are going to change our country. Today is a most important day for me. We're all sitting here as Kenyans, and we are thinking about how we can synergize, we can bring the private sector, we can bring the public sector to be able to grow our economy, develop our country, because that way we not only create jobs for our children, but we develop our country that will benefit, and when the economy expands, it's good for everybody. It's good for the private sector, it's good for the public sector, it's good for Kenya. I want to pledge and commit to you that whatever it takes, I will continue to lead from the front. Whatever the consequences, I will continue to lead from the front. Because you don't get the opportunity to be president anytime. It's a privilege and a great honor. And while I have it, I will do the best that I can, because it is high privilege to lead a nation. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for coming for this occasion. Sasa kazi inaanza tomorrow morning tukisonga mbele. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Successful models from jurisdictions including India, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Nigeria, Germany, and Canada, among others. Your Excellency, it's also worth noting or saying that signing of the National Infrastructure Act into law is the wider delivery of the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto as approved by Kenyans in the last election, and this was a promise which was in black and white in that manifesto. And Your Excellency, allow me to blow my own trumpet and affirm that I am a fast learner in this regard, and I can ably explain that manifesto even though I was not part of it at the time. But Your Excellency, it is also worth noting that even as Azimio coalition, where I belonged then, and Azimio is not there anymore, but where I belonged then and sat in the Economic Council, we also had a similar arrangement where we had also proposed that we would set up a fund to deal with infrastructure development, even though we didn't call it a bank as your own manifesto did. So all Kenyans were in agreement that we were facing constrained fiscal space, yet we still needed a huge and massive investment in infrastructure. And therefore, we had to think outside the box and come up with the innovative ways of financing our infrastructure projects. We are spending close to 27% of our expenditure, total expenditure, in supporting education in this country. Yet, you still hear complaints that we are not supporting education enough. We are spending so much money in supporting health programs, including primary health care, which is funded 100% by the national government. Yet still, you still hear concerns that we should put or allocate more resources in healthcare. We are spending so much money in social interventions to our elderly, those who are vulnerable in different ways, and yet still you hear that we need to spend money on these social interventions. And therefore, Your Excellency, there is need to take out of our budget some of the commercially viable infrastructure projects. And this includes, and not limited to, the following. One is the airports and seaports. Two is our national highways, those which are commercially viable, and there are many, and we have identified them. Three, we also have energy sector, which needs more funding. We are currently generating just well over 3,000 megawatts, but we need over 10,000, Your Excellency.
On behalf of the World Bank Group and my own institution, the International Finance Corporation, it's a true pleasure to join you in celebrating the enactment of the National Infrastructure Fund Act, a milestone that signals fresh momentum in Kenya's journey to meet its infrastructure needs. Infrastructure is not simply roads or power plants, as you know. It's the platform that allows economies to function, encompassing transport, energy, digital connectivity, as well as the regulatory frameworks that sustain them. We see that where infrastructure works, industrialization accelerates, trade expands, and jobs are created. Experience from similar funds around the world show that clear objectives, strong and independent management, and openness in decision-making can build trust and attract investment toward initiatives that serve national priorities and benefit communities. IFC stands ready to walk alongside Kenya in this effort, sharing global expertise, connecting with investors, and supporting project preparation so that the NIF delivers infrastructure that's impactful, sustainable, and inclusive. Your Excellency, we look forward to deepening our engagement as Kenya mobilizes capital to build the infrastructure that will power the nation's growth for generations to come. Thank you, and again, a very big congratulations.
Your Excellency, this framework, as was said before, has worked very well in other jurisdictions. Most developed countries can trace back to some of their achievements to this arrangement. It is akin to investing in factors of production, which increases the productivity of our country and various communities, and also increases, therefore, the competitiveness of our country. The governance around this fund allows long-term funds such as pension schemes under the RBA, some of the collective investment schemes under CMA, and life insurance companies under the IRA to optimize some of the opportunities that this fund will bring. So this allows us to participate in the growth of our country, and it is this growth that will then widen the private sector and again enable us to invest some more. So we will collaborate, and I can't wait, Mr. President, to see my peers and colleagues in the industry take part in this fund. Congratulations, everyone, and good morning.
Guests, I represent the pension.
Also created offenses so that those who misappropriate funds under this fund will, the leader of the majority party, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, for purposes during the period of consideration, the government owns structure fund, and it is intended to mobilize a framework for purposes of
while other state officials shall bear closed.